Greetings, one and all. Welcome to the third episode of the Icing on the Skate podcast. Hello, folks. How are we doing today? So, sorry for the slightly later start time. We're having a few problems in terms of trying to get people on the screen. As you can see, got a couple of lovely black screens here that want to join in. We have a couple of guests here. Well, we have one guest here and one person that I can never seem to get rid of. We have, of course, Mr. Chris Gadsby. So can't get him up either. Don't know why. I'm looking into it, folks. Don't worry. So we have the wonderful Chris Gadsby. And, of course, we have a special guest here today. If you've seen my tweets, you might have realised who it was. It's the lovely Max Artis. Hi, Max.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, bud?
We're doing really well, thank you.
Wonderful. So, I'm having some Skype problems trying to get these guys on the screen. If Chris and or Max, go ahead and do what we always start with on this stream. Take us through the scores of the EIHL this last week.
Okay, we'll do. So, Elite Ice Hockey. I'm going to do it in proper...
Ooh, how fancy.
Right, what are we on now? We're on the 24th, so we need to go from the 17th onwards.
Yeah,
right.
Because there were 2 midweek games, right?
Yes, there were.
Yeah.
Tuesday, 18th of September. Guildford Flames 1, 5 Flyers 4.
Damn.
Wednesday, 19th of September. Belfast Giants 3, Nottingham Panthers 6.
Hey, that was a good game.
Yeah.
Saturday, 22nd of September. Nottingham Panthers 2, Glasgow Clan 5. 5 Flyers 4, Belfast Giants 2. Milton Keynes Lightning 2, Guildford Flames 8. Cardiff Devils 5, Coventry Blaze 1. And Manchester Storm 1, Sheffield Steelers 2. Sunday 23rd of September. Sheffield Steelers 2, Cardiff Devils 6. Dundee Stars 1, Manchester Storm 2.
Hey.
Coventry Blaze 5, Milton Keynes Lightning 2. Guildford Flames 2, Glasgow Clan 0. And finally Belfast Giants 2, 5 Flyers 4. What that has done for the standings in the Elite League is that the Nottingham Panthers currently head the table. 6 games played with 8 points. Yay. The 5 Flyers in second, 3 games played, 5 points. The Cardiff Devils 2 played, 4 points. The Glasgow Clan 3 played, 4 points, and the Guildford Flames 3 played, 4 points, but the Glasgow Clan have scored more goals. The Sheffield Steelers 5 games played, 4 points. Coventry Blaze 2 played, 3 points. Milton Keynes Lightning 3 played, 2 points. Manchester Storm 4 played, 2 points. Dundee Stars 1 game played, 1 point, and the Belfast Giants 2 games played, 0 points.
And what about the Challenge Cup, Chris?
And in the Challenge Cup. Challenge Cup Group A, the Sheffield Steelers top the group with 3 points from 3 games, but the Nottingham Panthers have won their sole game in that group to be a point behind them.
Woo.
The Manchester Storm have played 2 games and have a single victory. In Group B, the Belfast Giants have played 5 with 8 points, the Dundee Stars 5 with 6 points, and the 5 Flyers 5 with 5 points. The Glasgow Clan are the bottom of that table, 3 games played, 1 point. And in Group C, the Cardiff Devils top the group, having played 2, won 2. The Guildford Flames have played 3 and won 2. The Milton Keynes Lightning have played 3 and won 1. And the Coventry Blaze are at the bottom of that table, having played 4, only winning once for 2 points.
So, a couple of episodes ago, Chris, you and I were very much like, this season's probably going to be the most competitive one they have in quite a long time in the Elite Ice Hockey League. And I think this week, especially this weekend, was a very clear indication of how competitive this league is at this point.
Yeah, definitely so.
So I'm going to throw over to Max now. Hi, Max. So
Hey.
any games that jumped out at you from this weekend of the results? Any teams that you think surprised fans, underperformed, overperformed?
I'd say Fife beating Belfast is a big coup, but then we've seen Fife getting better and better season on season, so I'd expect them to be in the as a bit of a surprise to most fans, to be honest with you, with their wins and how far they will climb up the table. I think they're going to be the shock of the season.
Yeah.
Definitely want to see them in the playoffs again because it was good fun having them there. Teams that have had a shocker, unfortunately, Sheffield continue to have bad form and bad run of luck, I suppose.
But they got Brendan Brooks.
Yeah, and he scored. And I want to allude to that in the fact that they released, so to speak, the two brothers and got back a Brendan Brooks. I think a lot of people in Sheffield will be like, well, that's 2 out and 1 in. So we're still down a roster spot, and with their injuries and anything else that's going off with them, it just seems to be bad news after bad news. I feel like it's a lot like the Panthers were 2 to 3 seasons ago.
In Sheffield's defence, though, Brendan Brooks scoring that last-minute game winner has now equalled the amount of points that the Rupert brothers had in their games with the Steelers. So, like, it's two sides, isn't it?
Yeah, I understand it's 2 sides, but do you really think that, like, what do they have, a week and a half, 2 weeks in the Elite League?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's a fair shout for them coming into a brand new league, into a brand new team. I think they should have been given a bit more of a. I don't think they were given a fair whack, so to speak.
I agree. I think you're. This is definitely what Chris and I were alluding to last week, especially yeah, sure, they've underperformed. I don't think they quite knew what their role in the team was, because they didn't really have long enough to figure it out. Was it Scott Pitt scoring about 1 billion goals every game for them and actually keeping them competitive? But other than that, they're not really getting much help from the goal-scoring side, except for the 1 goal that Brendan Brooks scored. I think every other goal except for Brendan Brooks' goal was scored by Scott Pitt this weekend. So, if the goal-scoring, at least you know you've got a clear goal-scorer there, but if a team can shut him down, then the Sheffield Steelers have essentially lost the game. I think what you were mentioning. Sorry, just moving on slightly to the Belfast Fife. I think you're right. Like, it is a shocker. Like the fact that the Fife Flyers beat Belfast. They didn't just beat them once. They beat them twice. Yeah. But both of their games this weekend were against each other, both Belfast and Fife. And the fact that it wasn't just like a one-off. They beat them both times. Like that, it's clear that Fife came ready to play. They'd watched the tape. They'd done their homework. They had a clear game plan when going into the game, and they managed to take 4 points. I mean, they're currently second or third in the league table. I know, of course, it's very
Fife
early
for second.
days. Yeah, Fife for second. They're undefeated in the league so far. Like, it's like Manchester. Last week or whatever, they'd played 3 games, lost 3. They'd played some tough opponents. Belfast are a tough team to play against. I mean, we saw it with. I certainly saw it with the Panthers game on Wednesday against them. Like, sure, the Panthers got up a couple of goals, but that was because Garnett was playing so solidly in net that he was keeping them out. And then, they kind of relaxed a little bit in the third period, and that's when Belfast managed to notch 3 of them against. So. I think Fife are looking pretty good to start the season. They may have had a few issues in the Challenge Cup and some of the earlier games, but they look like they're ready to go. I really think they do. What do you think, Chris? Like, what sort of games jumped out to you? What sort of narratives did you find interesting?
Guildford scoring 8 was a good result for them.
That was very interesting.
They seem to run a bit rampant on that one.
Yeah.
Because it's early days, and I think the difference between this and the NHL is because we only play at weekends. Like the NHL, if we were doing this weekly podcast for the NHL, there'd be 4 or 5 games for some teams.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult to. The league table doesn't change that much week to week, is the point I'm trying to get at. Here, but yeah, Guildford to put 8 past Milton Keynes jumped out at me. Obviously, Fife beating Belfast twice. Panthers were very poor on Saturday night, apparently.
Yeah.
From what I was hearing on last night down at the arena. But, I mean, the big game is going to be that game against Cardiff on Wednesday.
I'm quite glad that you brought up the Milton Keynes Guildford game, actually, because like this isn't the first time that Milton Keynes have had the score run up against them.
No.
I think the Milton Keynes Lightning are in danger of this becoming a regular thing if they don't figure out what their problems are defensively. They're obviously having problems defensively if they're allowing 8
that's
9
like
goals a game. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it's through any fault. Well, you could say through partial fault, but I don't think you can completely put the blame on the goaltender, because like he's had to stand on his head to make it a 5-goal loss in some of these games at the very least. Like, was it Patrick Colleen? Is that his name? Yeah. Like, from what I've seen of him, he has had to stand on his head for the Milton Keynes Lightning.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 6 games and 31 goals.
Yeah,
so that's like 5 a game.
Exactly. They've clearly got a problem defensively, and I think Milton Keynes are very much in a situation at the moment where defensively they're struggling with the puck and struggling to break out of their zone and struggling with opposing teams' forechecks. That their offense is struggling as well, because when you're 4-0 down, you're going to get frustrated, and frustrated players are going to be less likely to score goals. You know?
Well, yeah, you get yourself into the situation where you're overthinking things. You're not into your usual rhythm and whatever. You just kind of you shoot and hope, or you're scared of shooting the puck in case it doesn't go in. It bounces the wrong way and it goes. You kind of almost psych yourself out. You don't do one thing and then you stop and then you don't do the other thing, and it just kind of perpetuates from there, really.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one team we should mention, just for the fact that we have mentioned them, the Cardiff Devils. They're kind of a team that we're so used to them being good that we have the danger of not mentioning them at all, because they're kind of just doing business as usual at the moment in the league, aren't they? They won both their games this last weekend. They're undefeated since they joined, since their Elite League schedule started. So, they're doing a brilliant job. I mean, they racked up 6 on Sheffield. I mean, Jackson Whistle's having a really tough job taking over that starting goaltender position. I mean, he's a good player, and we've seen that he can be a very good player, but clearly it's either the defense or it's him that they're just not managing to get it done with Jackson Whistle in the crease.
I don't think Jackson Whistle's got the best team in front of him.
Yeah.
When he was playing in Belfast had the mantra of, right, okay, we've lost Ryan Murphy. We go so hard on defense that no one can get anywhere near Jackson Whistle. Whenever he makes a save, have at least four guys around to clear the puck out. Sheffield kind of like to rely on their goalie to make that save. Put a lot of emphasis on the goalie, doing a lot of the work, and then breaking out from there. Whereas Belfast were quite happy to go, right, okay, we'll fend off as much as we can, block shots, whatever. I don't think he's getting that kind of service in Sheffield. And I watched the highlights back of their last game, and listened to the interview with Tomo at the end. It was quite interesting because Jackson Whistle was ill on their travels back from their away game. Felt okay in the morning skate. Got a migraine during warm-ups. Decided he could play. They checked it over with the doctors, and then after the first 3 goals went in, I think, during the first period, and they pulled him out. Brad Day in. So I'm questioning his ability to go forward, like how long that's going to keep him out. If it is just a migraine, it's just a migraine. But it's not good when your number one goalkeeper tries to fight through a migraine. You put yourself in that situation.
Yeah, I think you make some good points there. Like, certainly Jackson Whistle is a lot more exposed as a goaltender this season, having a weaker side and a different game plan in front of him compared to something that he was used to in Belfast. I I question, like, I'm sure Jackson Whistle had his reasons for coming out of the game, but I feel like this... A lot of Sheffield Steelers fans that I see on social media are very much like, oh, it's Tomo making excuses. And I kind of feel like this is something that I mean, I'm kind of in one way, it's like, did we really need to know that Jackson Whistle was suffering through something? Couldn't you just say that you guys had a bad game overall? I mean, I think that would be a fair statement from them, considering they allowed 6 goals, and Scott Pitt, their only goal scorer, scored, basically, and I think maybe one other player did. I mean, I'm glad that the teams feel like they can have this sort of clarity, in the sense that, like, if something's happening with a player, they can tell us, like, he had a migraine. I mean, that can really damage your concentration, and clearly it did, or it had some sort of effect on him, potentially, because he allowed 3 goals very early in the first. However, this isn't the first time Whistle has done that this season. Like, is it a migraine, or is he just not adjusting that well? I mean, you can speculate all you want at the end of the day. It's just, it's food for thought, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think Sheffield are going to have a really tough time with it this season. They're going to have excuse after excuse, player leave after player leave. I don't want it to be that way. I want teams to be competitive and stuff, but the way that they've put their team together right now, it's just a bit like they've had a massive fire sale of players leaving and either going to other teams or not coming back because they can't play, and they've kind of cobbled together a team which isn't really performing, and then they're kind of pinning it on other players, and then players are leaving, and there's a lot of unrest in the Sheffield camp. And I as much as I'm a Nottingham Panthers fan, at the end of the day, I want to see competitive hockey. I don't want to see teams that last season were, heavily competitive and vying for the League Cup to the next year being, potentially a mid to bottom of the table team.
Yeah, but I mean, one positive about the Sheffield Steelers perhaps not performing up to expectations this season is the fact that it gives another team a chance to come in and be competitive. It gives another team, for example, one of the Scottish teams, maybe like Fife, for example. I know it's early days, obviously, but like it gives another team a chance to get their. They may have been waiting since the league had begun to get their chance to sort of be one of the league's top dogs, and it might in some ways be a changing of the guard, really, mightn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's sad to see, but again, other teams wouldn't get this opportunity if this was going to happen. You saw Fife and Manchester and Guildford to an extent last season with Panthers not doing so well in the league. Yeah. They came through and ended up just as high, if not higher.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Chris?
I found it interesting. Over the weekend, there's been quite a few posts. I saw Jono brought it up on Twitter and brought it to my attention that there's been quite a few posts that say, "Oh, the league needs a strong Steelers side." No, it doesn't. It needs strong sides, yes, but it doesn't have to have a strong Steelers side.
We don't want it to be a one-team league. Like,
no, I mean,
we don't want it to be the NBA. Like,
yeah, that's like saying, oh, well, the NBA needs a strong Lakers side. No, it doesn't, because they came like nearly last one year and it was still fine.
Yeah.
Oh, the Premier League needs a strong Manchester United. No, it doesn't. There's plenty of other teams.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I'm quite enjoying how competitive this.
Oh yeah, I am.
I like just for the fact that we're getting a much higher caliber of players going to all the teams in the league. I'm actually really impressed with how competitive it's been so far. Like, compared to maybe last year. Last year was kind of the first year that I properly started following the league itself, as opposed to perhaps just the Panthers. I think you can never know who's going to win a game now. Like, that's kind of always been the way in the league, from what I can tell. It's always kind of been like, oh, well, there is the heavy favourite, but you never know. Whereas now it is like, good luck trying to figure it out.
It has kind of always been like that a bit, but then you did have your arena teams of Sheffield, Nottingham and Belfast, and they would go on their 3-in-3 trip in Scotland, and chances are they would either win all three or get 2 wins in an overtime.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
But now it's becoming much more competitive.
It's so up in the air at the moment, and I think that's quite good. I quite enjoy that fact. So we're going to just shift slightly the conversation just to make sure we cover everything in the time that we have. So yeah, we mentioned earlier that the Sheffield Steelers had signed a new player to replace the Rupert brothers. And I'll just read the article that the EIHL have put out, and we can have a quick chat about it and then move on to
I've got his stats up ready.
Perfect. So, the Sheffield Steelers announced earlier this week on the 21st of September. So, yeah, it was just before their week game, wasn't it?
Yeah, Friday. No, it's Friday. Friday.
Yeah, there you go. So, they announced that they have signed veteran forward Brendan Brooks, with head coach Paul Thompson expecting the 39-year-old to be in the lineup this weekend. Now, there was a bit of confusion on social media as to whether Brendan Brooks would count as a British import. He doesn't. He counts a British player, but he's actually an import, just in case anybody was confused. Or I believe it's because he played his youth and junior hockey in North America, so that means that he's an import as opposed to a native
He's
player.
not British trained, which is the...
So, following stints in North America, Norway, Switzerland, Germany and Austria, Brooks came to the EIHL in 2015, where he joined Braehead, now Glasgow, the Glasgow Clan. A move to Scottish rivals Fife Flyers came a year later, but the Ontario native rejoined the Clan for the 17-18 season, scoring a career-best 32 goals and 57 points in 54 Elite League games. And Tomo's really excited to have him. He's, quote, he's a proven goal scorer at Elite League level, and he is coming here with a point to prove. So yeah, give us his stats, please, Chris.
Well, you've kind of covered them. Obviously, I can't go all the way back to, 1995. But, I mean, he's old. I mean...
39.
Yeah. But, I mean, you covered the stats in the Elite League. One thing is to mention is that it's 9 points in 10 games for Great Britain as well.
Yes, because, of course, he plays for the GB team, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is to you two, and I'd like to hear both your opinions on this, because we've kind of alluded to it already, but what impact do you think that Brendan Brooks is going to have on this team? Of course, for those of you who don't know, he joined the Steelers for their game, was it Friday? Their game on Friday. Who was it against? Manchester. He joined them for their the game against Manchester, and he actually scored the game winner in the final minute of the game for the Sheffield Steelers, so Sheffield managed to come away with a last-minute victory thanks to Brendan Brooks' goal. I believe it's the only point that he's scored so far in for the Steelers in the Elite Ice Hockey League. I did also see a bit of an article saying that Brendan Brooks has apparently always wanted to be a Sheffield Steeler, so he's clearly quite happy to be there. I'll see if I can find that article for you while I get your opinions. How much of an impact do you think that Brendan Brooks is going to make on the Sheffield Steelers lineup? Max, you go first.
I think he can score some key goals for them. We've seen how he can play with GB. The only reservation I've got is I've not looked into this. Just come into my head is the team cohesion. Obviously, he's gone in and scored the game winner in the Manchester game, but how well he can fit into that dynamic and be effective, I don't really know how many players he's played with before who are around him. I know he probably has good chemistry with Jackson Whistle through GB and maybe one or two of the British guys. I was Jonathan Phillips as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to come down to whether he. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to pin it all on him. It's going to be the Brooks show. Or whether he's a piece of the puzzle to a much bigger picture, and they're still trying to build that puzzle. So I think only time will tell as to whether he can be effective. But in the short term, he has been for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's played 2 games and scored a game-winning goal, so he's clearly had somewhat of an impact, and quite a positive impact on the lineup. I can imagine the fact that he's 39, he's had that experience with the GB squad, they want a bit of locker room leadership, by the sounds of it. It's kind of like they haven't really found their voice this season. Of course, they've still got the Phillips brothers, and they've still got quite a few key players in that lineup that have been there for a few years. But I think I think they decided to go young as the game is moving to younger, faster players. However, they didn't have enough veteran presence in the locker room, perhaps, or maybe not enough people saying the right things, that has potentially impacted them early on this season. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that the Elite League doesn't do time on ice.
Yeah.
Like the NHL does, because that's, I won't say concern. Concern is the wrong word, but obviously being 39, and yes, he's still prominent, but is he going to be able to put, especially if they do like their 3-in-3 up in Scotland, is he going to be able to contribute 3 nights in a row? Is he getting enough shifts and what have you? That's kind of where I'm thinking of with it.
Yeah, I can see what you mean though. Like he's on the wrong side of 30. He's almost on the wrong side of 40. So it's pretty safe to say that his career is very much in the twilight years. If there's any more to go beyond this year, he had to wait until a couple of weeks into the season before he got a contract from a team. So he's obviously not exactly getting a huge amount of interest. Maybe this season could be a chance for him to get some more interest and show, oh, well, I might be turning 40 soon once this season ends, but I'm still a serviceable player in the league. Maybe a team could look at him as a depth pickup. I think it just depends on how he, like, does he help turn the Steelers around? I mean, it's very short term at the moment. He hasn't yet. I don't expect him to be the sole saviour of the Sheffield Steelers this season. We've talked a lot about the Sheffield Steelers, clearly, because they're a team that we usually expect to do quite well, but are somehow struggling. I
think from a whole team point of view, I think as Max alluded to earlier, they've lost 2 and gained 1.
Yeah.
So even though they've got a useful player, they're still a player short.
Yes, and because the season's already started and quite a lot of players are either going to training camps abroad or they've actually started the season here, they'll either have to wait until a player gets released from a team and then pick him up, or they have to go and find somebody that hasn't been offered a job yet, which is most likely an aging player like Brendan Brooks.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the interesting thing, really. I think, I mean, as with everything, we'll have to see how it plays out. But that's my only thing: is is he able to contribute as the Steelers are going to want him to?
Yeah, and I think the question is there going to be too much pressure for him to contribute? Like, I think we're seeing it already with Scott Pitt. If a team can shut down Scott Pitt, then the Sheffield Steelers don't score many goals. Like he's clearly scored a large percentage. I don't know the exact stats. It'd be good to look up, but he clearly scores a huge chunk of the Steelers' goals. So we're going to move. Oh, sorry.
Go on. No, as I was going to say, because we do need to move on because we're a half hour behind where we would be.
Exactly. So
but I was going to say that playing for a team like Sheffield, there is that pressure to bring back trophies. It's the added pressure.
Yeah, I mean last season I believe was Tomo's first trophyless season since he joined the Elite League. So there's a lot of pressure on Sheffield this season to kind of bounce back. But I think we've talked about Sheffield and their players enough for one stream. Sorry, Sheffield. Move on.
Yeah.
So let's move on to... I read this article on the 17th of September. I don't know if any progress has been made. I haven't seen any. That's why I'm still bringing it up. Pete Russell is ready to chat with Stupka. So Glasgow Clan coach Pete Russell has spoken of his admiration for forward Vaclav Stupka and admits there will be a conversation about him staying beyond his month's tryout. The 32-year-old Stupka has picked up more than the stats say, but at the time of the recording, he has picked up 3 goals and 4 assists in 4 games since arriving at the club earlier. Chris, if you could take a look at the stats maybe and give us a more updated number on it. And the Glasgow Clan coach, Pete Russell, was pleased they got their win. This is talking about stuff last week, but a quote from him basically says that he really loves him as a person and as well as his passion for hockey. I'm sure we'll have a chat soon about keeping him on, as I'd like to keep him. So looks like Glasgow have a player that they consider essentially their superstar in Vaclav Stupka. Give us the stats, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just computer's being very slow.
Okay.
So he's played for HK Trnava in Slovakia for like almost a decade.
Wow.
Then he, I don't want to go to Elite Prospects Premium. Go away. He's been in Slovakia. He's only just left to come over to Glasgow. And it's 5 points in 3 games according to Elite Prospects.
Wow.
A goal and 4 assists.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, he's 32, so still got plenty in him.
Yeah.
And interesting. I mean, that's in the Elite League. That's just the league.
Yeah, I think he's added a few more points in the Challenge Cup as well.
Yeah, so in the cup. So overall, it's 9 in 6.
Wow. I mean, over a point per game. For a team like Glasgow that are looking to bounce back from last season's woes, that's exactly the kind of production you need from one of your stars. Max, what do you think about Stupka? Do you see him staying with Glasgow? Do you see maybe another team having a bit of interest in him and trying to secure him instead?
I think it'd be hard for any team to pinch him off of Glasgow. By the sounds of things, Pete Russell's very, very excited to have him and have him as part of that lineup. And I think that I'm pretty sure that he would pay a handful more to keep hold of him than him to be pinched by any other team for the rest of this season. It does surprise me that you still hear players coming over on loans and stuff. He's clearly proven himself in a decade's worth of play for his previous teams, and his stats are clearly good enough for them to keep hold of him in what could potentially be a higher league. I don't really know. Why Pete Russell wouldn't want to tie him down to a secure deal for at least the end of the season, if not longer, would be foolish not to, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's quite interesting that a player of his caliber was on a 1-month tryout, but I think we always assume with these tryouts it's the management's choice to put them on a tryout. Potentially this could be something like Stupka might have chosen to try out with Glasgow just to see how he adjusted. Maybe he wanted to go to university up in Scotland, or I don't know. Like, we don't know the ins and outs of each of the players' lives, so perhaps this was something from the player's perspective, going, okay, I'll give it a try, and if not, I'll return to my home country and see if I can get work there. I think we've always got to. We shouldn't always assume that it's the management that have decided that they're having a player on a tryout. Maybe this is an example of stuff. Of course, we don't know. I don't have any proof of either way. But I think, like you said, if it isn't broke, why would they need to fix it? And the only way, the only thing they really need to do is sign him to a season-long contract. I think if Stupka's happy to carry on being that guy in Glasgow, Glasgow will be happy, provided nothing else out of the blue happens. They will be happy to keep him as that guy for the team, because like he's giving the team hope. I don't want to pin it completely on one player because it is a team game, and I'm sure there are several other players. I'm not too keyed up with the Scottish teams personally, but there's obviously a few other players that are helping with this. But a guy going over a point per game, like they beat Nottingham this week. I mean, Nottingham, like we said, top of the league. I mean, of course, we have our own bias towards Nottingham in our own little way, but like that was a game that I'm sure many fans went into and going, yeah, Nottingham will win it easy. It's Glasgow. But Stupka's helping change that sort of perception of, oh, it's Glasgow, it's an easy win. And like we said earlier with the competitiveness of the league, like you can't make those assumptions anymore. And I think that's brilliant. So yeah, I really do hope that Stupka stays with the team. Personally, I'd like to see him remain in Glasgow, because then, like we've said already, it keeps the league as competitive as possible, which is what we want to see. We don't want to see blowout wins. We want to see competitive hockey night in, night out. So yeah. Any last thoughts on this, guys?
I think you guys have pretty much summed it up. I mean, I think Russell needs to sign him and get him there for the year. It's going to help Glasgow, and it's also, I nearly said Brayhead then, and it's I saw announcer Steph, the Panthers announcer, and he did the same thing in the first pre-season games, and he had a piece of paper and he stuck it to the glass and he just put in big letters, Glasgow, not Brayhead. It's the same for the first pre-season game. He just said, "Don't say GMB."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, no, I think he really needs to. He needs to hold on to him if he can.
Yeah. So one last topic from the EIHL, and then I think we'll move across the pond. So I put up a question to these two lovely guests of mine. So I put up the question, and I'd be interested to see your thoughts in the chat, people that are watching. Will a Scottish team win any of the trophies in the Elite League this season? So I'm going to
Are we presumably not including the conference trophies where there is a Scottish conference?
We don't care about that. That's irrelevant. So whoever would like to start, feel free.
Chris, go ahead.
No.
Chris, go ahead. I've spoken enough.
I think Dundee won't, definitely.
Okay.
Glasgow.
Max, your face there. It's like, ooh.
I can't even see it. Max's face is gone for me.
Oh, really?
Oh.
You haven't gone for me. You're all right.
Oh, that's all right then. No, Dundee won't. I mean, Glasgow can, but they've got to be consistent if they're going to do the Challenge Cup. The playoffs, if they can get in there and they are literally, one game series, then maybe.
Yep.
But I think it's more likely that a Scottish team won't than a Scottish team will.
Okay. What about you, Max?
Dundee, I can't see doing much. Unfortunately, it's sad to say, but I'd like them to stay. I'd like them to give teams a hard run of it. Don't just kind of roll over for them, which I don't think they have been doing. They had a kind of a tough time against Belfast in the start of the first week or so of the league, or Challenge Cup. Glasgow, I could see them making the playoffs, but I don't think they can get through to the finals weekend. Fife, I'm backing Fife to be the highest Scottish team.
I'd agree with you there.
And shock a few people and maybe get to the playoff final weekend. Don't think they're going to get to the Challenge Cup. Can't see a Scottish team winning the league anytime soon. Although I would love it to happen, just for the pure fact of hockey in Scotland and it growing, and we get more and we get more teams north of the border. But unfortunately, at the moment, they're no match for the arena teams, even though they will trip them up every so often. So anything could happen in the playoffs. If Fife get there and they have a good route to the final, then I think they could probably even get to the semi-final, if not the final. And I think they're probably the most. They're the one that I would put the most money on personally to get as close to a trophy as any other Scottish team. Yeah,
I agree with you there on the 5 points. So you brought up an interesting thing about whether teams make the finals or not. Chris, do you think any team could make the finals? Any Scottish team could make a final of something?
Yes, I think they can. More likely, finals weekend in the playoffs. I think that they will have. I think that Glasgow and Fife will both get in there into the top 8.
Okay.
And I think that they will get to, or at least one of them will get to finals weekend. Of course, it all depends on the draw.
Yep.
And where everybody is seeded. I don't think they'll win it, but I think that they'll be at finals weekend. I think it would be good for the league if a Scottish team got to finals weekend. In terms of British ice hockey, it'd be great if the Devils, the Giants, the Scottish team, and an English team got in, because then the British ice hockey, the final four's one from each.
Yeah. Which could well be a scenario given how competitive the league is this season.
Yeah. I think they'll get to finals weekend. I think Glasgow and Fife will make the 8-team playoff. I think one of them, but I don't know which yet, will make finals weekend.
Yeah, I would probably mirror what the two of you have said. I think Fife is the most competitive team out of that group. I think Glasgow could potentially sneak in there and be a bit of a sleeper this season. Like both of you have said, I don't think Dundee has a huge amount going for them. They just seem one of the. Of course, they're one of the sort of like slightly lesser funded teams, one of the weaker teams compared to the other Scottish teams out there. And of course, we don't have Edinburgh anymore, so not that they would have a chance anyway. So. Yeah, I think
I had them down for the Grand Slam this year.
Oh well, there you go. So I think I could see Fife going to playoff finals weekend, but I think it's going to be a bit of disappointment again for Scottish hockey fans. I don't think they're going to make it to the actual like playoff final. I can't remember if we've done a prediction on that, on who particularly we thought it would be, or if we're going to do it. I don't know.
You and I have done who's winning the playoffs.
Yes. Okay. But did we do who they were against? Like who?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Doesn't matter.
We'll do that closer to the time.
Yeah, we'll do that once playoffs hit, I think. So yeah, I think that's enough for the Elite League today.
Yep.
I think we've covered quite a lot of interesting stuff. It'll be very interesting to see. Of course, the Devils are visiting the National Ice Centre in Nottingham on Wednesday. A game being shown.
Hang on, you mean there's live ice hockey from the Nottingham Arena?
Yeah, and we don't actually have to pay money to see it. Like, this is a win-win.
It is, isn't it? Although it's not in HD.
Moment.
Gary Moran's probably like, what the hell is this? Back in my day, we didn't have video cameras.
Yeah, but what? Check my hand.
But I bet you they'll still have a good attendance.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I really hope that they do have a good attendance, just so we could be like, yeah, you know how it's like, you know how you thought it would affect attendance, and the fact that the arena's like really full. Well, there you go. I mean, it is a Wednesday game, so bit of an asterisk next to it.
I was just about to say, like, it's a midweek game. It's against Cardiff. A lot of people are going to end up getting back from work about 5:30 and thinking, I could go to the rink.
Or watch it on TV.
Or I could watch it on TV at home with a pint and fish and my dinner.
True. Yeah. I think that's the case with any midweek game, though. To be fair, like, it's just the sense that we can actually make some extra revenue from the people that are too tired to go. But that's a whole different conversation that we can have maybe.
That's a topic for a half an hour bit.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
So we're gonna go from the Elite Ice Hockey League and move over to the National Hockey League across the pond. Of course, the pre-season has begun in the NHL. Lots of young players, lots of older veterans on professional tryout contracts, trying to earn their spots on an NHL roster before opening night on October 3rd. And we had some interesting stuff take place. I'm just going to rattle off a few because there's one I want to have a big chat about. And I think if you've been keeping up to date with my Twitter, you'll probably know. And you two, I think, know out of the list that I gave you. So
best to race through it quickly because we haven't got long.
Yeah, exactly. So Sam Reinhart, Chris will be happy to know that because he's on his fantasy team. Sam Reinhart, as a restricted free agent, has re-signed with the Buffalo Sabres. He is remaining with the team for another 2 years, by the looks of it. $7.3 million contract, so that's 3.65 million a season. So that's not too bad for him. I believe he was the number 2 overall pick in the 2014 draft. He had 50 points last season. Which wasn't too bad. He had a pretty poor start to the season, but as the season went on, the final 38 games, he had a much better point production. So I think the Sabres are hoping that he'll finally reach his potential as a number 2 overall pick to help Buffalo in this rebuilt team. Of course, they've traded away several different players. They've picked up Rasmus Dahlin from the draft, so he's looking like he's going to be a 20-minute-a-night defenseman for the Sabres, which is something they haven't had in quite a while, I would argue. So the Buffalo Sabres are looking, well, I think they're quite glad with Sam Reinhart, and it's very much if you play well on this contract, you might get your payday. If you don't, we're sending you somewhere else. Anybody got any thoughts on it?
Well, it's good for me, obviously.
Yeah, it's very good for you, otherwise you'd have to use a waiver spot.
But yeah, I think he's one of those players where he could be really good this season. He also could have an awful season.
Yep.
And they're wondering what they've spent their $3.65 million on.
he's very much a Sam Bennett from the Calgary Flames. Like, you never quite know what you're going to get. Like, they have these really high potential, but they either live up to it for a couple of games or for a little stretch of 10 games, and then they disappear into the nether again.
Precisely.
So that was very interesting. Another piece of information from the NHL. Liam Kirk, of course, the 7th round pick of the Arizona Coyotes in the current draft. First British-born and British-trained player to be drafted into the NHL. Unfortunately, he was cut from the Arizona Coyotes training camp earlier this week. I mean, it was to be expected.
Yeah, we expected it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that he got cut. We would have liked him to have stayed longer. But unfortunately, he was cut from training camp, so he has returned to the Peterborough Petes of the Ontario Hockey League, who have just started their season this last weekend, and Kirk seems to be doing a pretty good job. He picked up an assist in his first game, in his debut with the team, and then they played another game yesterday, and he scored his first goal with the team. So I believe he's averaging at least...
Beautiful goal.
Exactly. He's really showing his solid two-way IQ, I think, with the Petes already. But both of the goals that he's... Yeah.
He will get into the NHL.
I think he will if he keeps up the way that he's going.
Yeah, because he will get in there.
Both of the goals that he's helped contribute to points-wise have been with takeaways from the opposing players. Like, he's got his head on a swivel there, and his IQ is clearly above the grade of some of the other players that he's playing against. Sure, it was an Ottawa 67s team, which wasn't particularly very good. They gave up 4 short-handed goals in that game yesterday. I think Kirk's looking pretty good. I mean, if he can keep a point-per-game pace in the OHL, he's certainly going to get some attention on him from the Arizona Coyotes. Yeah. So, of course, they won't be calling him up this season because they've sent him down to the minors and they can't call him up without signing him to an entry-level contract and that burning a year on the contract. So I don't think they can do that. So his next action will essentially be this time next year in training camp. So let's see how a year does for him. I'm quite happy for him. I mean, like we said, him being cut from training camp and going back to the Ontario Hockey League was to be expected. But he did take part in a few scrimmages with the Arizona Coyotes and other prospects they had and roster players. I think he scored a goal or 2 in those scrimmages. So he's clearly doing the right things in order to get noticed by Arizona. And I think he's taking the right route. He's not trying to rush himself into the NHL.
Yeah.
He could be a sleeper pick. I think like he's doing this country proud. I think.
Yeah.
What round did he get picked in? The 7th?
7th.
Yeah.
It's the same as Henrik Zetterberg.
Exactly. Same as Henrik Zetterberg, Henrik Lundqvist, Pavel Datsuk. Pavelski, I think, was picked in the 9th round, or I think it was back when they had the 9th round, or it was the 7th. Like, there's plenty of solid players that can come out of the 7th round. Sure, it's like less likely percentage, but it's still possible. So, the penultimate point we have to talk about is the Stanley Cup is having a bit of work done to it. So, for those of you who don't know, the Stanley Cup has several different rings around it, which has the names engraved of the Stanley Cup champions from a specific year being written on it. So, of course, most hockey fans will know, whenever your team wins the Stanley Cup, all of the players and the management and the equipment managers, all the staff that were part of the team get their name put on the cup. However, the cup can only be so big without it being huge. We've had over 100 years of the NHL with only one season in those 100 years not going ahead. So there's like 99 different sets of people that have won the Stanley Cup. So you can't fit them all on there. So what they do roughly every 13 years is they take off one of the bands that has loads of names on it, and they send it to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame recently, and yeah, all of the bands are there. I saw them. They look lovely. So they have removed the set they've retired only 12 out. They usually take off 13 because that's roughly how big the band is. However, for some reason, the engraving of the 1964-65 Montreal Canadiens team takes up twice the normal space. However, nobody knows why. Obviously, somebody wanted to just make it slightly bigger than usual. So the band that's being retired features the champion teams beginning with the 1953-54 Detroit Red Wings and finishes with the 1964-65 Montreal Canadiens. 340 names are engraved into that band, and it features some of the greatest players of all time, including Alex Del Vecchio, who won 3 Stanley Cup titles, Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay, who won 4 titles each. Butch Bouchard, Bernie Jefferian, Doug Harvey, Tom Johnson, Dickie Moore, Jacques Plante, Maurice Richard, the Rocket Richard, has got his name going off into the hall. And we've got Glenn Hall, Bobby Hull, the now late Stan Mikita, Pierre Pilot, Andy Bathgate, who, when he was with the Maple Leafs, remember when they won a cup those years ago? It hasn't happened since, obviously. There you go, Chris. And Bert Olmsted, who won 4 times with Montreal and another win with Toronto. So, so we're getting very close to the end of the original 6 era with the band that was removed. I think there's 3 more seasons of of the original 6 era before the teams come on. And there's an interesting... I just put this in the podcast because I thought it would just be an interesting thing. I found it quite interesting, so I thought some of you might find it interesting. And there's a new series of articles that the NHL website are doing called Engraved in History or Etched in History or something like that. Yeah. It basically takes a look at all of the different bands that have been removed and some of the interesting facts, like all the misspellings that they have. For example, they've put the captain of the team on one of them as the equipment manager, which I thought was quite funny. just sort of like the little bits here and there, the little mistakes they've made with each of the different bands. So I thought that was quite interesting. I don't know what you guys think.
I've not seen any of those.
Yeah, there's a couple of... I'm a bit geeky, so I kind of delved into the Stanley Cup because I think it's a fascinating piece of history, especially hockey history, sports memorabilia. But there's even names on there that have been crossed out for certain reasons and everything. So there's loads of interesting, cool facts about it. But I thought this was the first ever ring to be retired.
No.
Reading the article only quickly because I was just it kind of pops up on the timeline.
Yeah, of course.
The way that it read, it sounded like it was the first ring.
Yeah, no, it did very much feel like that. But I believe it's every 13 years. They said.
Somebody
that's how long the rings is.
Somebody worked out. I remember seeing it, or maybe about a year ago or so now, that if the rings weren't retired, the cup would be about 2.5 meters tall.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And nobody would be able to lift it.
Like most of the players say after they win the Stanley Cup, like they don't realise how heavy it's going to be after playing like a 7-game series against the second best team in the National Hockey League. But get a 2.5 meter trophy there, just leave it on the ground. Leave it on the ground. You're going to hurt someone. You're going to pull out your back and end your career unless. So so that was the penultimate topic from the NHL. I thought that was quite interesting. And then the last piece of news regarding the NHL.
Here we go.
So, for those of you who don't know what happened, and you might not know, there was a preseason game, I should add, between Max Domi and Aaron. Well, no, Max Domi.
They were the people.
Preseason game. There was an incident, but there was a preseason game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Florida Panthers. I believe it was at Bell Centre, Le Centre de Bell, and there was a bit of an incident between Max Domi, son of Ty Domi, and Aaron Ekblad, son of Mr. Ekblad, and they had a bit of an incident, which resulted in Domi sucker punching Ekblad in the face. Now, Domi was ejected from the game. I would recommend you go and see the clip, or watch it now while you're listening to
definitely
this.
Watch the clip.
Happens, yeah.
It's easy to find.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll find it all over the place. I think Sportsnet did a quick YouTube video on it. Go check out their channel if you want to see it. But yeah, so he sucker punched him. Ekblad was bleeding all over his face. Domi got ejected from the game. He got suspended by the league for the rest of the preseason. That's basically the long story short. So I have a few things I want to say on this, but I thought I'd let you guys sort of chime in first, just so I don't not give you the chance to say. So Max, what did you think about this suspension and the incident itself?
So the suspension, I feel, is a bit wishy-washy. You suspend him for games that don't really matter. You suspend him for games that, if he doesn't play, does it have a really big effect on the team? No. The incident itself, there seems to be a coming together of the players, a jarring between them. Max Domi clearly wants a lot more of Ekblad than Ekblad wants of Max Domi.
Yep.
And why he felt we had to smash him in the face I I have no idea whether there was words exchanged and stuff. It'll be interesting to see. Like, I don't think they'll ever release it, but if a mic was to ever have picked it up or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think personally that Ekblad gives Max just as much as Max gives Ekblad, and Max thought it was necessary to start a fight, and Ekblad didn't want any of it. Should he have started a fight during pre-season? Probably not. No. Was the incident worth punching the guy in the face? No, it probably wasn't. But something had clearly got him riled up, and we don't know the events. I don't personally know the events leading up to that. I didn't watch the game. He could have been on his case all game and just thought that's the final straw. But suspension-wise, it's a pointless suspension. Like, what effect is it going to have on Max? Barely anything. He's going to have more time to rest and get ready for the season. And what effect is he going to have on Montreal? Barely anything that can bring another prospect up to play the rest of pre-season.
I mean, Montreal are going to be a basement-dwelling team anyway this season, so like, I don't think anybody's going to be like, "Oh, their season's over." Like, it's over already. Let's be honest. Chris, what do you think about this whole incident?
I think that the suspension is nowhere near long enough, and Max Domi was a right idiot. I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be blunt. It's nowhere near long enough. You can't just go around hitting people that aren't even engaged in the fight. He clearly didn't want to fight. He saw no need in it. And to keep going on about that, I mean, if you do that anywhere other than in the middle of the ice rink, you get done for assault. I think to ban him for 5 pre-season games is quite frankly ridiculous. He needs to be gone for a good chunk of time, maybe up until Christmas at least, from my point of view.
Interesting.
And you just can't. There's no need for it. You've got to be able to control your head. Like if both players are up for the fight, then so be it. But you can't just go around punching anybody you feel like.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to throw my 2 cents out here. Feel free to agree or disagree. I don't care. So, I think we need to keep in mind a bit of context with this, and me sort of looking at other perspectives and sort of reading articles based on this has given me the chance to get a bit of context in this whole event. Not about the actual event itself, but some of the stuff surrounding it. Number one, it's pre-season, so there are more fights than you'd see in the regular season. Why is that, you may ask? It's because players are trying to fight for a roster spot, and sometimes they might take that literally. If a player has crashed into the boards with another player and given a hit that they deem is not right, then they'll go, okay, I'm going to stand up for my teammate. I want to show the coaches and the players that I will stick up for them through thick and thin, and I will be a good team player, a good locker room presence, da-da-da. So you will see lots of fights. This preseason, we have seen plenty of fights in the preseason. It's a one way of players getting the coach's attention, getting the players' attention, and showing that they're trying to do their very best to quite literally fight for a roster spot. That said, Max Domi wasn't fighting for a roster spot. Max Domi was traded for this offseason by Mark Bergevin from the Arizona Coyotes. They gave up Alex Galchenyuk, who was their only other somewhat center. I mean, he was actually a winger, but they got rid of their only decent center, who wasn't drafted in this entry draft, and brought in Max Domi. So they have another winger on the team when they need centers. Interesting choice, but what do you know? So there's a few things. I think with the person that he chose to tangle with, I don't like, because it's... Aaron Ekblad is somebody that he's still very young. He's 22, 23 years old, I believe. He was first overall pick once before in a couple of drafts ago. I think it was 2014, I think. He was from number 1 to number 4. I think he was number 1. Yeah, he was the number 1 overall pick by Florida, I believe. Seth Jones was the one that went like number 4. And he's had concussion problems early in his career. The last thing he wants is to get sucker punched to the ice and have another concussion. Luckily, the league has... he went through the concussion protocol that is required by the league when something like this happens. It looks like he's cleared that concussion protocol. It looks like he doesn't have a concussion. But the last thing he needs in his career at the moment is another concussion from somebody sucker punching him in the face and going, oh, I'm going to stand up for my teammates. The actual event itself, from what I could see, was that they came along against the boards, a kind of a standard hit that you'd find in the league. I think Ekblad, from what I could see, gave him a bit of a tap with his stick on his leg, on his shin pad, something like that.
Yep.
Max Domi didn't like that, so he turned round, grabbed him, wouldn't let him go. Ekblad clearly wanted to skate away from him. He clearly wanted to move away and have nothing to do with it. Max Domi starts punching him with his glove on. He starts trying to put in a couple of jabs here and there. Ekblad still doesn't retaliate. He could have easily dropped the gloves and started punching him too, if he really wanted to, if he was interested, but he didn't. And then he decided to throw his glove off on his right hand, punch him once square in the face. Ekblad goes down to the ice. Luckily, he was still conscious. I mean, he could have hit his head on the ice and gone out cold. I think the number of games was fair. I think them being preseason games isn't fair. I think they should have been 5 regular season games from opening night till game 5 of the Montreal Canadiens season. Now, Max, you brought up the fact that this doesn't affect them. I've heard some. I've watched Tim and Sid's response to this Sportsnet podcast that they do, or show. I think it's more of a show than a podcast. To which Sid especially said they're trying to get some chemistry with him and Jonathan Drouin and whichever guy they have on the other wing. So this does affect them in the short term, that it's going to take them longer to find that chemistry. I agree with that to an extent. However, this is a situation where somebody clearly couldn't take no for an answer. Ice hockey is one of those sports where you can go, I actually want to drop the gloves with this person because they've been really irritating me all night. And then the other person might think the same. They go, shall we do it? The other person goes, yeah. You drop the gloves, you have your thing, you get it out your system, into the penalty box for 5 minutes. Not many sports allow you to do that. So they're already in an environment that's like, yeah, if you want to air your differences with a couple of punches thrown either way, that's fine. Go for it. Have fun. We'll stop it when it's clear that it's done. But other than that, we're good. However, this is an example of somebody going, oh, I'm gonna show my teammates that I stick up for them. I show that I don't want to be pushed around by sucker punching a guy in the face. Like, it was a sucker punch. It's just absolutely ridiculous to me how he's got away with 5 preseason games suspension. It's got to be regular season. It's got to be regular season. I don't think this is an example of. With some other instances, you might go, well, if they don't get suspended that long, other players might copy. I don't think this is an example of that. I think this is an example of a player that clearly thought something different to the situation, was clearly wrong, and I think the league should punish him for it. If it was the remainder of the preseason and 5 regular season games, yeah, I think that's fair. Because previous suspensions have been like 2 or 3 games. Whether they're like regular season or playoffs, from the research that I found. 5 games and the preseason, or just 5 regular season games, would have been fair to me. And I think the fact that they've taken into account, oh, this preseason, fights do happen. Yeah, for players that are trying to fight for a roster spot. Max Domi isn't fighting for a roster spot. He's technically one of the best players on their roster right now. Definitely one of the best forwards. He's going to be starting on that first line for the Montreal Canadiens if everything makes sense for them. So I just cannot fathom how the Department of Player Safety has decided that this is something that can just be solved by a preseason slap on the wrist. It just baffles me. It absolutely baffles me. Rant over.
So my one final thing is, like you said that, alluding to what Tim and Sid said, it is going to affect them because they want to make chemistry, and so that it doesn't stop him training.
Yeah,
it doesn't stop him going to the gym. Doesn't stop him hanging out with his teammates. Doesn't stop him forming relationships. It doesn't stop him going to scrimmages or whatever else the team puts together to facilitate whatever they do for team chemistry. The only thing it's going to stop them, the only thing it's stopping them doing is playing, I'm going to use air quotes here even though you can't see, competitive games.
Yeah.
And they're preseason games. He's playing against guys that are fighting for spots and stuff. And again, competitive games. He's still going to have that cohesion with his line mates, whether he's playing in them games or not.
Like, he's still got training camp. Like, he's still going to be doing scrimmages and still going to be doing set pieces with players on that roster anyway. I don't think I don't think not playing in a game situation in the preseason is going to affect them too much, because like 75% of the players, or like half of the players that they play against in those preseason games, won't be on the team come October 3rd. So I don't think it really affects it that much. I just can't see how the Department of Player Safety have looked at that incident and gone, you know what, suspend him for the rest of the preseason. That'll teach him. Like, I don't want to bring, like, former, like, or I don't want to bring in, like, other family members' acts into it, but there's been a lot of comparisons to Ty Domi, of course, who was a very, very physical guy in the National Hockey League, and Max Domi's dad. And there's been a lot of talk about, for example, him sucker punching Ulf Samuelsson that one time. I think it was in a game against the Rangers, and, yeah, Ty Domi just proper sucker punched him in the face. Now, people have also mentioned with that, Ulf Samuelsson was the king of sucker punching other players in the face, so the rest of the league actually gave him a high five for it and essentially paid his fine for sucker punching Ulf Samuelsson in the face. Yeah. Because basically the rest of the league and the other players in the league said, "Thanks, Ty. We really needed someone to do that for us." This is a different scenario. Aaron Ekblad doesn't have that history on him. He's got histories of concussions. He's one of the best defensemen in the league, I would argue. He's a solid defenseman. Because he plays on Florida, I think he's a player that goes very much under the radar, because Florida have had their struggles. I think they're a team on the up this year. I think Aaron Ekblad is going to be a very big reason for that. He came into the league and played roughly 20 minutes a night, and he's done that ever since he joined the league. And he's put up decent points. Like, I don't like the fact that he was put in a position where he could have had another concussion, because we know what happens. You get one concussion, something happens, you get two concussions, a couple of other things happen, and then you're out of the league, because you just can't keep that healthiness, you know? Yeah, and
it shows testament to like how much, like you say that McLeod is a kind of an under the radar player. Florida have held on to him.
Yeah,
he's clearly got some sort of value. If he was to be put up for trade, you clearly get a ridiculous amount back for him.
Yeah,
but Florida don't want to give him. Obviously, don't want to give him up. So he's clearly a player of value to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's definitely an alternate captain on that team. I mean, they've just announced Alexander Barkov, haven't they, as the captain of the Florida Panthers? But he's definitely a locker room presence.
They also put out a photo. I can't remember who's in the photo because I don't know the players without seeing the names on the back. Because I don't follow the Florida Panthers as much as the Nottingham ones. But they put out there's one main captain and then two alternates for home, two alternates for away.
Right. Okay.
They post it on their social media.
Right.
It's quite easy to find. It's quite cool. But again, he's part. I'm pretty sure he's part of that.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I mean. And like you said, he's a player that would bring a lot of interest because he's a former first overall pick. He's a former first overall pick, but unlike somebody like Neil Yakupov, he's a first overall pick that has actually lived up to his expectations and hasn't made a big fuss while doing it.
But then he's a first overall pick that's a defenseman.
Yeah.
That's a very, very rare thing to do.
I mean, before Rasmus Dahlin was picked in this draft, I'm pretty sure that Ekblad was the most recent first overall defenseman pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking 4 years difference. I mean, since then we've had McDavid, Austin Matthews, and Nico Hischier. And I mean, look, they're playing fantastically in the league, all of them, especially McDavid. So, I just think this is a crazy scenario. The biggest thing about this is I'm glad that Ekblad passed the concussion protocol. I would be so much more annoyed. I'm not even a Florida Panthers fan, but I would be really annoyed for the Panthers if he actually came down with a concussion as a result of this. That would be so infuriating. A guy that struggled with concussions before is looking to get healthy and be a real leader on the ice for the Florida Panthers and try and get them some success that they haven't had in the last few seasons. I'm just glad that he looks like he's okay, and even if he isn't, he's got about a week or so to kind of get himself ready for the upcoming season.
That's the key thing. One thing, I know we've really not got much time, but one thing that is kind of going with me a little bit is this suspended till the end of the pre-season.
Yeah.
Now, if this incident was earlier or later in the pre-season, Would the 5 games still stand, or would they still say to the end of the pre-season? I.e., would he only get like 2 games if it was later, or would he be banned for 7 if it was earlier?
That's a
Or
very good question, actually. I would imagine if it happened, because this was Montreal's 2nd or 3rd game in the preseason when it happened. I would imagine it would have been rest of the preseason. Yeah, I think if it happened earlier, it would have been. I think they were quite set on the 5 games. Like I said, with some recent similar incidents of a player sucker punching another player, it's usually only been like a 2 or 3 game suspension, and that's regular season. So I would imagine, like, for example, if it happened like their penultimate preseason game, he probably would have got still 5 games, but 2 preseason, 3 regular season. That's what I'm kind of thinking they would have gone for. But yeah, like you said, we're kind of running a little bit out of time now. One other quick piece of news that was just announced from the NHL. I mentioned it to the two of you just before we went live. Brian Gionta has decided to officially retire from the National Hockey League after 16 seasons in the league. He was a former captain of the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres, and apparently he's accepted a role with the Sabres organization's, the Sabres front office. That's pretty cool for him. He's a native of Rochester, New York. He was chosen by the New Jersey Devils 82nd overall in the 3rd round of the 1998 NHL draft. You know what's going to happen? We're now in the years where the players that were either picked or playing really late into the 90s are going to retire. That's going to feel weird when it's like when we get to the point maybe in a season or two's time where it's this person was chosen in the 2001 NHL entry draft. That's going to feel weird. He won the Stanley Cup with New Jersey in 2003 and scored 48 goals in the 05-06 season, breaking the Devils' record set by Pat Verbeek of 46 in the 87-88 season. He spent 3 seasons with the Sabres between 2014 and 17 and played for Team USA in the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. He had 7 points in 20 regular season games with the Boston Bruins after signing as a free agent February 25th. He finished with 595 points in 1,026 NHL games. So that's pretty cool. We wish, I think everybody here on the Icing on the Skate podcast wishes Brian Gionta luck in his new front office role with the Buffalo Sabres. That's pretty cool. Fair play
of course.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so we're now sort of in the twilight. We're in the Brendan Brooks of this podcast now. So we have we have a little bit of time to answer some questions. So if you want to chuck some questions into the chat for us to answer, if anybody's still there listening. Yeah, so if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you want to join the conversation, we live stream this at 7 p.m. British time on Monday nights. Slightly later today because we had a few technical problems. But yeah, we're usually on 7 p.m. British time. So you can join the chat live, say what you think, add extra comments, say things that we might pick up on, add some comments for this section. But just while we wait for some questions to come in, just a reminder to everybody in the Fantasy Hockey League. Nothing much going on this week, obviously. But we're getting started next week. I think it's this time next week? Yeah, roughly. No, it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, it starts on Wednesday.
Yeah. So it's next Wednesday that the NHL season officially starts. So sort of next weekend sort of time. Start looking at your lineup and see who's playing games. See who you want in your lineup for that week. Except for Max, obviously, because Max has got a bye week, week 1. But I mean, I guess that gives you the luxury of seeing the players that play well on your roster that week and the players who don't play so well, because that will give you a sense of being able to figure out any choices that you want.
Trades. I can't find anybody to trade with at the moment for some reason.
I think the reason for that is nobody's actually played any games yet.
I understand.
Yeah.
I really wanted. Go on.
Sorry, go for it.
I was just about to say, I don't know who's got him. I can't remember the name of the team, but whoever's got Elias Peterson, as much as I want to trade for him because he's a Vancouver Canuck and I think he's awesome, he probably won't play this season. So trade him for somebody.
Peterson is playing this season.
Give him up cheap.
He is playing this season, without a doubt.
Trying to put a stealth.
Yeah, he's played so well this preseason though. Like, you can see why he's been the Swedish Hockey League rookie and MVP of the year. Like, Jesus Christ, he plays well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, putting him on a line with Brock Besser as well, that's going to be killer. So,
and Horvath.
yeah. So, we've got a question from the lovely Ben. Hi, Ben. How you doing? What are your thoughts on Cardiff possibly being able to play in a 15,000-seat arena in a few years?
Oh.
They wouldn't fill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They'd have to cover half the seats, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I mean,
Ottawa
there's
Senators.
no... I mean,
Melnick out.
it's not 15,000 when hockey's on, because like the NIC has 10,000 when it's not hockey because you can sit on the ice. Or is that 15,000? I mean, being away from Cardiff now, I've moved home from university. I'm out of the kind of swing with things down there, but they wouldn't fill it.
Do you reckon they'd be able to fill a 10,000 seat?
Well, no, because nobody else fills like a 7,500.
True. Because their capacity is what, 3,000 at the moment?
I think it's like 2,800.
2,800. I mean, I guess if they built that arena, it would take a little while for them to kind of fill it. But I think they could fill it after a few years if they keep winning trophies. I think if they keep being successful, nobody wants to go see a losing hockey team.
Well, no.
And whilst I think it would take maybe quite a while, whether it would actually work out, of course, is a very big question. But I think if they kept winning silverware, there'd be more in the public eye. There'd be more that the team and the fans in the city could brag about, essentially. So I don't think a 15,000 seater. I don't think any team could fill a 15,000 seater in this league at the moment.
See, in Wales, it's all about the rugby, and with Cardiff having the Cardiff Blues, and now Cardiff City are back in the Premier League as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, no, they won't fill 15,000.
No, I highly doubt it.
It'd be silly for Cardiff to try and play in that sort of arena. It would feel incredibly empty if they get.
It would.
Say they get 7,000 people in that. It's a drop in the ocean compared to what they could potentially be playing in.
Yeah.
I don't think that 15,000 seater arena will be used for that reason.
I reckon they should stay where they are because that arena is very intimidating.
Yeah, I think even the Big Blue tent was just as intimidating. It was a fantastic place to play in.
Yeah.
Even if it was falling apart and potentially going away with the wind.
Well, yes, quite.
But I think they could probably do expanding the capacity to. I don't want to say double because that's going to be quite hard. But I think they should look at expanding the.
I think they could expand it to 5,000.
Yeah, I would say 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I mean would put them kind of the in-between point between some of the smaller rinks and the arena teams, wouldn't it? Which might actually work out quite nicely for them.
Coventry area, wouldn't it?
Yeah. They're or thereabouts, and I think that's about right for this sort of thing because you can get you get enough space for your season ticket holders, and then enough space to grow a new I'll say new fan base, but your fan base that can only afford to go to the odd game here and there, or can't commit to a season ticket.
Interesting, yeah. So that's the answer to that question, I guess. Last call for any questions. We've got a few more. We've got a little bit more time. We would have been streaming for about 90 minutes, which isn't too bad. Another, I think, just while we wait for another question, there's a very interesting article that I retweeted on Twitter by The Guardian that came out yesterday, the day before, something like that. Oh, bye, Chris. And it was basically putting forward the question. It was clearly somebody that hadn't really been to...
No, I'm still here. The connection's just gone awful.
Oh, okay. It was clear... The person that wrote it, I don't quite have the name off the top of my head, very clearly hadn't really been to a proper hockey game before, which is fine. That's absolutely okay because there's many people in the UK that haven't. He was essentially putting forward the question as to whether ice hockey could, or the Elite League, could become more popular than football in the UK. I thought it was a very interesting piece. I don't think it will, or if it does, it will take a very long time and a lot to go wrong in football. Essentially, it would require them to shoot themselves in the foot somehow. But I thought it was a very interesting article. The fact that it considered Robert Dowd the most famous player in the league. I think he's a pretty good player. I don't think he's the most famous. Who would you say the most famous player in the league is?
Still playing?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Like, you can see why they went for Robert Dowd, because you're kind of like, oh yeah, like, hang on a minute, still playing. Ooh.
Yeah, but then you've got people like Ashley Tate.
Yeah.
It's a very famous name amongst three very well-known teams. Yeah, Sheffield, Nottingham, and Coventry, and GB. Obviously, David Clark gets a massive shout. Corey Nielsen gets a massive shout because he played and coached. I'd hesitate to shout out as well the Phillips brothers who are playing in Sheffield.
True.
Maybe even Ryan Finnerty, who is stuck around this league. Adam Keefe.
Andrew Lord.
Andrew Lord, massive name. And then even some of the younger guys like Robert Lakovic is probably quite fairly well known around the UK hockey scene.
Yeah.
Then as soon as you start going, hockey players that aren't known outside of the hockey scene, well, if you're not connected in the hockey scene, you wouldn't know them. Yeah. So all depends on for example, their news coverage.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that they don't have the luxury of being on adverts for Sky Sports or being put in Head and Shoulders commercials all the time. So
and all sorts, yeah.
Yeah, they're not exactly players that get to be put in the limelight when they're not playing. I mean, the Nottingham Panthers struggle to get a bloody webcast out, so if they can't even show their own games, how are they going to get like commercial deals? Let's be honest.
Yeah,
exactly. I think there's as far as I'm aware, there's only one BBC news reporter sports reporter, that does the Nottingham Panthers. That's the guy. I can't remember his name, but it's the guy that does it.
The Nottingham Post guy, Matt Davis.
Yeah, Matt Davis, but then there's also the national one, the East Midlands one.
Owen Bradley.
Yes.
He's stopped now because he now works for Derby County Football Club.
Yeah, he does. Oh. No, I'm on about the guy who's on East Midlands News.
Oh, Colin Hazelden.
Yes, he's the only sportscaster that I can see at that sort of level, giving the Panthers any sort of outreach.
Which is a shame, really. Ben has just suggested in the chat to have Colin Shields on a Head and Shoulders advert, which could be quite interesting.
You see his dandruff go.
Yeah. So, I think that's a pretty good podcast, if you ask me, ladies and gents. So yeah, I think. Lawrence stays on as Stewart searches for goalie. Hang on a minute. There's a new piece of news that's come out. Following an injury to number one netminder Mika Vikman, head coach Danny Stewart has confirmed that he is in the market to find short-term cover. Oh, interesting. Stewart said, so apparently Vikman could be out for several weeks. Depends on how the injury heals. Okay, so covering the absence was Brit Jordan Headley, who performed well. Okay, so he also confirmed that Canadian trialist Dylan Lawrence will remain with the club on a rolling contract. So he impressed the team enough that he's got himself another contract. So I think that, on that news, I think that's a really interesting place to finish today's podcast. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Thank you, Chris, and our lovely guest,
Not
Max,
a problem.
For joining us this week.
You're welcome.
We'll be back. Yeah, thank you. We'll be back next week for more EIHL stuff. We'll no doubt have a chat about the Devils-Panthers game on Wednesday.
Oh, yes.
And we'll it live, so I'll give you my reaction.
There you go.
If you would.
And then we will talk. I think next week's one will be primarily NHL stuff.
Yeah.
As it'll be a couple of days before the season begins. So, thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, all that other stuff. Thank you to my guests, and goodbye.